Lads, welcome back to Fusion YGO, and today I am going to be bringing you a competitive build for the Sacred Beast deck. So this deck doesn't cost a lot. It's actually pretty budget friendly, for the most part. I've seen some pretty decent success with it online and some testing against some meta matchups. It does have its issues. It does have its bricks. It does have its, shortcomings, as all decks, especially older decks like this, have. But we're going to go ahead and dive right into it and just kind of explain our card choices and why this is what we're working with. So we're going to start off with the Sacred Beast lineup. We got 2 copies of Haman. We've got 2 copies of Raviel. We have a single copy of Uria, and finally, we have 1 copy of Raviel, Lord of Phantasms, the Shimmering Scraper, whatever. So, Haman is the one you're going to want to summon the most often, because it has the spell card that prevents your opponent from using spell cards once per turn. Raviel is just... he's really big. He's great for OTKs. Going second, this one's more important. Uriah is strictly here, so you have access to the fusion card. And then 1 copy of this guy, who doubles the current attack points of Raviel, which can lead to a lot of OTKs. But that's it really for these guys. Haman is also important because you can turn him into defense mode with the spell card that we'll get into later, and it will prevent your opponent from attacking anything but him. It's protected from targeting in typical lines of play, and it's really big, so it's hard to deal with. Alright, next, moving on. We have triple copies of Dark Beckoning Beast. Dark Beckoning Beast searches your entire archetype, everything that lists Raviel, Haman, or Uriah up to and including themselves, and it gives you an additional normal summon of a 0/0 Fiend. That works really well because your next one is triple copies of Chaos Summoning Beast. Chaos Summoning Beast lets you tribute it to summon one of the big guys from your hand. And then you can banish it to be able to add Fallen Paradise from your deck to your hand. So it's terraforming as well as a free body. And then lastly, 2 copies of Dark Summoning Beast. It's searchable. It's good if, and you could up it to 3 if you wanted, but it's a level 5, so it requires a tribute, and then it tributes itself to summon them out of the deck, which is really good. And you can banish it to add another one from your deck to your hand. If you open one of each of these guys, it is a really crazy board state that you can get into. And Dark Summoning Beast is really good, but I find that the other 2 are just better in almost every scenario. But Dark Summoning Beast is searchable, so it's not that big of a deal. It's not a huge hindrance. But you already have so many big monsters in the deck that you don't want to run this at 3 and clog it up. Next up is triple copies of Opening of the Spirit Gates. Spirit Gates is going to search, again, your whole theme, anything that lists them. But you can also revive a 0/0 Fiend by discarding a card, which works well with a group of cards that we're going to get into in a minute. And you can, once per turn, if you have one of the big guys on your field, a level 10 monster, so one of the big guys, you are able to add a continuous spell card from your graveyard to your hand, which does come in clutch for one of the cards coming up. 2 copies of Fallen Paradise. It's searchable, and it honestly does nothing at 3. It does not add anything. But your whole goal is to try to end on 1 or 2 of the Sacred Beasts, so you can lock your opponent out of a lot. 1 copy of Cerulean Skyfire. This is the spell card that negates his opponent's spell effect by turning him on to defense position. Card's just absolutely crazy. And then it also... if one of these guys leaves the field, one of the Sacred Beasts leave the field for any reason, you don't take damage that turn, so your opponent can't OTK you, which can really come in clutch. And that resolves, they have to deal with this card first. 1 copy of Dimension Fusion Destruction. Jeez, easy for me to say. This just lets you get Armitile out. by using cards in your graveyard. It's a Honestly, I've been contemplating cutting this and Uriah and just going with more powerful cards. But I really like having it as an option because if you want to, which you can do, you can just run Predaplan Faraday Anaconda, and this just kind of gets you into Armatile for an OTK. 2 copies of Awakening of the Sacred Beasts. I was playing it at 3, but it's searchable, and I wanted to have more of a larger draw engine, and I have another card that I'm playing in the main that's pretty crazy. Okay. Now, 1 copy of Dangered Nessie. That's right, we're playing the Danger. So we got Nessie, Jackalope, Tsuchinoko. These just help increase the consistency of the deck because they're basically just Upstart Goblin with legs. But we run a slightly larger one because we're also running 1 Bigfoot, 1 Thunderbird, 1 Mothman, and 1 Chupacabra. These guys are just free bodies. They're darks that ups your dark count so you can play 3 copies of Allure of Darkness so you can draw more cards. This just helps you thin your deck out. That's really the most important part of this, is to get as many cards out of your deck as possible. And Allure of Darkness is just, it's good for that. Next up is 1 copy of Darkest Diabolos. This card, you could up it if you wanted to. I like it at 1, because when you see it, it's really powerful. You draw so many cards that it can easily get out. And with Allure of Darkness, like, it's really good, but you also have another 1-of that you can use to pitch it, or you could pitch it off of opening the Spirit Gates to summon out your Chaos Summoning Beast, and then use your Chaos Summoning Beast's effect to tribute itself to summon 1 from your hand, and then you get Darkest Diabolos for free. There's a lot of ways for it to be used, so it's good when you have it, but it's not necessary for the deck. 3 copies of Called by the Grave to protect you from hand traps, because it's not exactly the strongest against it. 1 copy of 1 for 1. This is just an extender. It gets you to your pieces. And 2 copies of There Can Be Only One. So this deck's biggest problem is that you have to deal with threats, and this card shuts a lot of decks down. This card can really be something hard for a lot of decks to play around. Adamantipator, just straight lose to it. You can lock, because they have to have the way to deal with it. Rocket Link hurts them. So this just gives you a lot of ways to be able to combat against the meta. And that's going to do it for the main deck. Let's hit the extra deck. So the extra deck, honestly, there's only a handful of cards that actually mean anything. And then everything else is just kind of extra deck stuff for a card that I'm running in it. So 1 copy of Armatile. It's your 10,000 beat stick. 1 Emperor Trilage. This is just your other target. You don't have to run this. I'm just running it for cheese factor and because I have the space. And then the cards that really matter are Salamangreat Almirage. You'll use it to get things off the field so you can link summon and do not link summon, but get like Darkest Diabolos back and things like that. 1 Nightmare Cerberus, 1 Phoenix, 1 Unicorn, and 1 Boral Sword. And that's it for the cards that actually matter. These guys all make sense. Now, I run Ghost Reaper, and Winter Cherry. So everything else that you see here is just targets for it. You can just put in things, whatever you feel like is necessary against the meta, what's good against it, etc. So that's what's in here at the moment. Next up is your side deck. Okay, in the side deck, I'm running triple copies of Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries because I have so much extra deck space that I'm not using because I'm running 4,000 beat sticks and a bunch of ways to OTK. This deals with that. So triple Reaper. And then I'm running a Kaiju package of Gameciel, Kamungus, Radian, and Jizukiru, as well as 2 copies of Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. This is just a board clear. This deals with threats. This is Forced Interruption. And you're able to OTK around these guys because you run big bodies. So you don't care if you're giving them a 3,300 beater. 2 copies of Twin Twisters to deal with back row. 2 copies of Anti-Spell Fragrance because it's really good against a lot of decks, and it can force them to use things that they don't want to use in an instant. Or you can force them to use things like Twin Twisters when you already have the Cerulean Skyfire lock up. So you just flip this, and then it locks them out. And then 2 copies of Summon Limit, which just helps you grind people out that have stronger decks than you. And that is my competitive Sacred Beast deck. This deck is super fun to play. Like I said, there's a couple of changes you could make. Like, you could cut the Uriah, and you could cut the Dimension Effusion Destruction. You can cut those two. And instead of that, you can run more Dangers, you could run more draw cards, you could run, like, Upstart Goblin, and a third there can be only one, or a third of the Awakening of the Sacred Beasts. Like, you have options, a lot of options that you can do with this deck. And because your extra deck is so loose, you're able to run things that, like, you're able to run cherries, and it's not a negative. And you could put a bigger hand trap engine in. You could, just with the Dangers, the only one I want to run is something that doesn't conflict with the Dangers, and if I'm going to go second, then I had to put in something that doesn't conflict with the Dangers, and that would be the Kaijus. So that's how I constructed the deck. This is what I've been playing. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Don't forget, Friday is the Q&A, so tune in for that if you want to see what I think of a whole bunch of different questions. The questions are getting crazy, so make sure to check out the Twitter or the video, the other video. It's on the channel right now for the Q&A. Leave your questions there, and that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to subscribe, and until next time, lads, good fun. Have luck.